Okay, so I was working on editing another video and I was going to like maybe explain a little bit of like where I've been and maybe like how I'm gonna come back. But Roe v. Wade got overturned yesterday, so I feel like I really need to talk about it, and I'm sorry that this video is gonna have like basically the smallest amount of editing possible, and I'm gonna try and do this in like one or two sittings. So my apologies for looking like shit. If you want to know why that is, wait till the next video, I explain it there. Okay. So a lot of you guys know I've been pretty public about having had an abortion in the past, and I have talked about it in live streams on my channel as well as other people's channels, but I felt like I really need to just make like a dedicated video for people to, I guess, be able to reference. It'll be a little bit shorter and it'll just be in one thing. So okay, so trigger warning, obviously I'm going to be talking about abortion and just like some other medical issues. I'm not really going to go into those. Some of them are like mental health topics, but I don't think I'm really actually going to talk about that. Like I said, I'm just going to try and do this like basically in like one or two goes. I feel like I'm gonna maybe do a little bit more of an intro and then kind of actually go into my own personal story. But the reason why I want to talk about this is because in some states, like, there are really, really, really restrictive laws that are like basically that are already going into effect because of Roe v. Wade being reversed, and people are gonna die. Like, people are gonna die, and it's like, I'm really worried about people, and I'm really worried about particularly people who are in the situation that I was in when I got my abortion, when me and my spouse at the time had to make that decision. And that was not an easy decision to make. That's never an easy decision to make. Anybody who tells you that it's like an easy decision to make is wrong. I will tell you that like the clinic where I went, I don't remember if it was like once a month that they do it or once every 2 weeks that they do it. I know it wasn't even like a weekly thing, that it was like every day or every week on Wednesdays. But like all of the, and it was all women that were there with me for abortions. There weren't any like non-binary or trans men. But like everyone didn't want to be, this was like the last, like this was the last resort for all of us. And it wasn't, no one wanted to be there. No one was like, oh yay, like I'm so happy to like be getting another abortion. Like, no, like it like it's not that case. And I think that there have been people who like have been like public about like, oh, I'm like celebrating my abortion, in some ways of like trying to like take it back, that like people are so fucking attacked for having abortions. But also I think that like those people are outliers, and like that they're maybe having a reaction that isn't like an actual like reaction that people would have if like there weren't attacks, literal attacks on like abortion clinics and like people who have abortions. And like I've been like open and vocal about this, and like I've talked to my therapist about this, that I've had to like get really, really freaking tough skin as far as people telling me that I should burn in hell, that I'm a murderer, that I should be stoned to death, like all of these things that I get told all the time because I had an abortion. And when I talk about like my situation, you're gonna see how like I really did feel like I was backed really into a corner. I personally, like it's hard to say like if I was not in that situation, if I would have had like a healthy pregnancy that was a surprise pregnancy or whatever. I don't know how I would have felt, but like also at the same time it doesn't matter. And I think I'm gonna talk about that in a little bit. And just like the main thing is that like anytime like being pregnant is always more dangerous than not being pregnant, right? So like, and if you doubt me on that, like go ask a doctor. Being pregnant is always more dangerous than not being pregnant. And for the mother, not just for like the fetus or the whatever. And asking a person to like risk their lives, you can ask a person to risk their lives for someone else, but you can't fucking force them. And like, I feel like that's really what it comes down to. And also it's June and I forgot to decorate, so. Not sure if you can see that. Nah, you can't. Oh well. So the point that I think I was getting at there is that my story is just one example of somebody that could be dangerously affected by this change in legislation, but I am not the only example. There are other people who have different circumstances that have come to the decision where they need to terminate a pregnancy for other reasons, and I am not going to judge people for what their reasons are. I'm just filming this to give you my story of how we came to that decision, which I think is actually a really very average decision. It's very similar to a lot of other people's decisions, and I think that it needs to be heard because I also feel like a lot of people have a tendency to like demonize people who have abortions and not even really listen to their circumstances, and because every person who has an abortion, like I said, it's not a decision that's taken lightly. So some real quick misconceptions to get out of the way. First one is that people who are pro-choice like want people to get an abortion. That is not true. Year over year, the rate of abortions is dropping in America, and like that is something that like people on both sides of the aisle are happy about. We want to make as few abortions as possible. Like it's not a thing that that anybody wants. Myth number 2 is that people seem to think that women are like, and people with uteruses are using abortion as like a substitute for contraceptives, which again is not true. It's more costly, it's more invasive, it's fucking painful as fuck, and like obviously the like cultural stigma surrounded with it, like there's no reason why anybody would use that as a form of like birth control. Like that's not a thing that happens. Also, myth number 3, if you think that you don't know anybody who's had an abortion, like you're probably wrong. I think it's something like 25% of women have had abortions, and probably the reason why you don't know about it is because you add to the social stigma around people who have had abortions, and so they don't feel comfortable being upfront and open with you about that. So yeah, let's just get those things like off the table right now. Okay, so last thing, and then on to my personal story, and this is just for people who are new to my channel, who are unaware. My now ex-wife is she's trans, and the time period that I will be referring to is before she came out as trans, but I will still be referring to her by her chosen pronouns out of respect for her and her transition. So yes, I will be saying she, her, just know at the time that she was presenting as masculine, if that is confusing to anyone. So this has been several years ago now, and like I said, I have talked about it pretty openly in the past. I'm not really like embarrassed or emotional about it. If I seem kind of like, I don't know, like without expression about it, I don't know how else to explain it, but if I like, I don't necessarily know that I'm masking, but also like I've talked about it and processed it a lot. It's not something that I'm ashamed or embarrassed of. It is a thing that was really difficult and painful to go through at the time, but it's something that I worked through. So my now ex-wife and I had, when we were on vacation a few years back, we had a birth control failure. Because of medications that I'm on and also just like my health issues that I have, I am unable to have any type of hormonal birth control. At the time we were looking into sterilization, but my insurance only covered a specific type of sterilization that they were just starting to find out that there were a lot of complications with that. So we were kind of like on hold as far as doing that. But what we were using was we were using non-latex condoms, and specifically lambskin condoms, because we were in a monogamous relationship. Those don't protect against STIs, but again, we were in a monogamous married relationship. And we were just trying to prevent pregnancy, which they are effective for preventing pregnancy, but they are very, very expensive. When we were on vacation, we had run out of condoms, and we went to just a grocery store and bought condoms that were like non-latex condoms, and I feel like they were like, it doesn't even matter the brand. It's not important because it can happen with any brand. So I don't even, actually, I'll probably go back and bleep that out, the brand name, if I remember to do that, because it's not important. They were a different brand than we were used to. And we did end up having a birth control failure. Sorry, one second. Sorry. So we did end up having one break, and we thought that it was early on enough that it wasn't an issue to where we needed to go out and get Plan B. I started to get sick like a couple weeks after that, but around the time that I had gotten sick, I also got my period. And since then, I have found out that this is like an actual phenomenon that can happen with people who menstruate, and if they get pregnant, I don't know what it is specifically, but like I had actually 2 periods after I was pregnant. I was like 7.5 weeks pregnant by the time that I found out, because I was just freaking sick, and I was like had like cold sweats all the time. Well, I had like a lot of the very common signs and symptoms of pregnancy, but I did not know about it until, like I said, I was like 7.5 weeks along, past the cutoff point for a lot of states where it's like then illegal to get an abortion. And also at that point in time, again, remember, I was on like a lot of medications. The one medication that I was on, they basically said if you have taken it for like even the first couple of weeks, like your child will have birth defects, probably fatal birth defects, that if you get off of the medication now, that there's a chance that they won't be fatal. But also it was a medication that I was like, it was part of like my medication regimen that was literally keeping me alive. So like if I continued to take the medication, it would not be a viable pregnancy. For sure, if I stopped taking the medication, there was still a good chance that it wouldn't be a viable pregnancy. But I would also be putting myself at risk at that point in time as well. So my wife and I talked about it and cried about it, and decided that like we needed to terminate the pregnancy, and that like maybe at some point in the future that maybe we would consider kids, but like at this point in time it wasn't something that we could do. We certainly couldn't raise a special needs kid. We couldn't and we know how it is with the system, that like special needs kids do not get adopted, unfortunately. And it was a really heartbreaking decision that we made, partly because we were both in our 30s at the time, and we were both somewhat established adults, financially established in some ways, not as financially established as we would like to be, but like to a lot more financially established than a lot of people who have kids, you know, and that was a really, really hard decision for us. We cried a lot about it, and I think like I don't know how to explain it, but it was just like, it was really hard, but we knew what we had to do. And we signed up to go for the procedure. She took me to the procedure. It was the most painful procedure. It was, I think, probably the most painful thing that I've ever experienced in my entire life. It was, is not something that anybody wants to go through, ever. The whole thing was awful, but like the procedure itself was just like absolutely awful. I don't regret it, but it was really hard, and afterwards we felt a sense of loss and a sense of mourning, and we still feel that sense of loss and that sense of mourning, for that potential life, right? Personally, I'm not religious. Neither is my ex-wife, and we don't necessarily look at that as like a full person. Like, it wasn't obviously a person with full autonomy or anything like that, but still, I mean, that is the potential of a life, and that wasn't something that we took lightly, but it was a decision that like we had to make, and it was the decision that was the right decision for us. And if people are in a situation that's maybe not the same situation, but they're looking at their life and what they can do, and they can't bring a child into that, they're like, that's, again, it's always a last resort. It's never like the first, you know, choice for people. Like, of course we always think about like other options first, but like it's not always an option. And I don't know, I'm like, that's my story, and that's really kind of all there is to it. But like, there's so many other stories, and I can't tell all those other people's stories, but they are just as freaking valid. And I just, like I said, I'm not religious, but if you are religious, please, like, I'm not a historian, so I'm not really the person to explain it, but look into like the history of the church and their opinion on abortion and how it's changed like over the years, and like how it's now, because it's like so freaking political, and it's not because of like religion, it's because of politics. And that's the thing that's like really upsetting to me, because okay, to me, your religious belief applies to yourself, and like that's cool, you know. People who like want to cover with a headscarf, like that's their religious decision. They've decided to do that for themselves. They don't say every woman has to cover their head, right? Like it's a decision that you make for yourselves. And I just, like, we live in America, which is like we don't regulate people's personal freedoms, and I don't know, like, I'll maybe make a video with my side tangent about regulating people's personal freedoms, because that's another video for another day, and this is long enough, and I want to just like edit it as little as possible and get it up for you guys, because I'm in shock, I'm in mourning, I'm angry, I don't know. Okay, sorry, I kind of trailed off there again a little bit. But what I'm trying to get at is that in situations like mine, or in other situations, who, like, I'm not going to judge people on, like, what their situation is, but in situations like mine, like, the way that the legislation has changed, somebody in my position would need to wait until it was life-threatening. Like, basically, I would have had to, like, go off of my meds, wait till it was life-threatening for me, um, and then have the procedure, or just like there, like, and in some states, anybody who, if they, like, tried to go to a different state, which there will be people who are able to do that, probably everywhere, but in some states that's illegal to go to a different state, or to help somebody go to a different state, or and furthermore, it's not just the cost of, like, going to another state, but, like, in my situation, I had to go to 2 different appointments, and they had to be at least, I don't remember if it was 24 hours apart or 48 hours apart, but, like, I had to, like, go for, like, counseling, and, like, have a counselor sign off that, like, I understood, what I was doing. They made me sign off on, well, now it's been recognized as misinformation. I think at the time it was maybe not recognized by everybody as being misinformation, but, like, all of the hoops that I had to jump through were, like, way more than enough hoops that, like, people should already not have to do that shit, and, like, for somebody who, like, if there's not an abortion clinic that's, like, within, a regular drive of them, with even a few hours drive, then they have to, like, pay for a hotel, they have to pay for childcare, they have to pay for time off work, they have to pay, like, there's, like, they could lose their job potentially, right? Luckily I was in a situation where I didn't have to take off time for work, but, like, a lot of people do, and, like, it's not, like, I remember in 2017, which is before the panini, that there was a poll, and it was, like, over half of Americans, if they had an unexpected expense of over $500, they did not know where they would get that money. Whether it would be, like, from borrowing, like, a lot of people were like, oh, I'd borrow it from a friend or a relative, but, like, over half of them were like, shit, I don't fucking know. I don't know. Like, and this is, like, and to put another, not even, like, another barrier, but, like, the hugest barrier of all on top of this, where, like, now people have to, like, leave the state or leave the country or, like, whatever, to, like, just be able to, like, to make their own reproductive decisions in peace, anyway, I don't even know how to end this. I really don't. I'm going to put some links down in the description. If you need to terminate a pregnancy, if you want to help financially, if you're not personally in need, but you want to help financially. I don't know what else to say. Just, like, I don't even feel right doing my sign off, so